watched you trade your convictions for comfort. Not in one decisive moment, not with a dramatic fall. You eroded. You chipped away at yourself in small, almost invisible gestures. You believed in showing up early. Then you were on time. Then you were a bit late, but it's fine. You believed you would never lie to yourself. Then you edited the truth. Then you called the edit a new perspective. You believed you would never be like the people who drift through their days half awake. Then you learned how easy it is to sleep with your eyes open. This is how identities die, not by execution, by neglect. You still use the old words: growth, focus, becoming better. You roll them around in your mouth like a language you no longer speak, but enjoy pretending you remember. You think repeating them keeps them alive. It doesn't. You can chant the word fire in a freezing room. It will not make you warm. You tell yourself you are evolving, that you're choosing peace, that you're letting go of harsh expectations. You've learned to package your collapse as healing. It sounds gentle. It sounds mature. It sounds almost wise. But the truth is simpler. You used to stand for something. Now you stand for what hurts the least. You haven't admitted this out loud. You're careful. You still curate how you appear to others. You keep fragments of your old self on display, like trophies from a war you abandoned. You mention the books you once read, the brutal mornings you once lived, the risks you once took. You mention them with distance, as if they belonged to a different lifetime. They did. They belonged to a version of you that still believed pain was a price, not a problem. I remember that version. I remember the way you looked at your own reflection with a kind of quiet suspicion, as if you knew you were not yet who you had to become, but you were willing to move toward it. There was tension. There was conflict. There was something alive. Now you call this tension stress. You erase it with distractions, with noise, with digital anesthesia. You fill your hours with other people's lives, so you don't have to face your own. You say you're just resting. You're not resting. You're decomposing in slow motion. I speak like this because I'm not invested in your comfort. Comfort is already winning. It doesn't need my help. You want to believe that your core is still intact, that beneath the softened habits and the numbed convictions, there's a pure, unbroken self waiting to be reactivated. You like that fantasy. It lets you postpone everything. I could change, you say. I could start again. I could become something else, if I really wanted to. You repeat this while doing nothing. You confuse possibility with proof. You sit in the ruins of your discipline and call it potential. Listen carefully. There is no untouched core. There is no sacred inner self that remains pure while you betray it. You are what you repeatedly do to yourself. Your identity is not an artifact. It's a daily act of construction or demolition. you have been demolishing, piece by piece, belief by belief. You've downgraded your standards in ways small enough to ignore, but large enough to accumulate. You didn't set out to do this. You never woke up and said, "Today I will become weaker. Today I will become dishonest. Today I will move one step closer to becoming a stranger to myself." You just stopped defending the line. You let the first excuse through, then the second, then the third. Now the gates are open, and you call it going with the flow. Here's the part you try not to think about. You have opinions about people who live like this. You see them, you judge them. You tell yourself you're nothing like them. But your nights look like theirs. Your choices look like theirs. Your mind is becoming as cluttered and passive as theirs. The only difference? You remember who you used to be. Memory is your last luxury. I'm not accusing you. Accusation implies surprise. There's nothing surprising here. This is the standard trajectory. Beliefs decay, identity softens, comfort takes the throne. Most people never notice it happening. The only unusual thing about you is that a part of you does notice. A small, stubborn fragment is still watching. It watches you scroll. It watches you delay. It watches you talk about one day while doing nothing today. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It only observes and records. That fragment is me. I've watched you sell off pieces of yourself for temporary relief. Each time, you told yourself it was necessary. You were too busy to keep your word to yourself. You were too overwhelmed to stay consistent. You were too hurt to maintain standards. You weaponized your pain as a justification to abandon your principles. You want to call this survival. It's not survival. It's slow suicide with nice language. You talk about becoming someone, as if the word becoming were a direction instead of a disguise. You cling to the idea of transformation because it allows you to avoid the reality of motion. Talking about change feels like progress. It's not progress. It's rehearsal for a performance you never step on stage for. People like you love potential. Potential is clean. Potential is painless. Potential has no blood on it. You say, "I'm improving, I'm learning, I'm working on myself." These are your lullabies, soft enough to keep you sleeping, strong enough to silence the part of you that knows nothing is actually happening. You used to mistake intention for evolution. Then you learned a new trick. You mistake planning for evolution. You create structures in your mind. You arrange imagined futures like furniture in a house you never build. You feel productive without producing anything. You've mastered the art of almost, a stack of unfinished beginnings, a library of unopened potential, a life lived in the parentheses of soon, later, and when the time is right. These words are your delay tactics. You coat them with meaning, but they're anesthetics. You use them to escape the urgency of now. Let me be colder. Let me remove your last defense. If you could truly become who you imagine, you would have taken even the smallest step by now. Your desire is real, but your desire is not enough. Your wish to evolve is not a currency. It's a hallucination. You love the fantasy of transformation more than the sacrifice it requires. You're loyal to the idea of improvement, not to improvement itself. You worship the image of the future self, the one with clarity and discipline and the spine forged in fire. But you refuse to kill the version of you who sleeps past alarms and calls excuses self-care and pretends comfort is healing. You say the old self will fade naturally. No, the old self must be executed. There is no transformation without violence. There is no new identity without a funeral. There is no evolution while you protect your rituals of comfort. You fear that if you let go of who you are now, there will be nothing left. You're correct. The emptiness comes first. Most people run from that emptiness. They run back to who they were because familiarity feels like safety. You'll call that balance. You'll call it being realistic. But the truth is this: you're terrified of subtraction. Becoming someone does not begin with addition. It begins with the death of what is unnecessary. It begins with surrendering your indulgences, your distractions, your comforting lies. Transformation is not a remodel. It's an exorcism. You keep asking for the next version of yourself, while protecting the habits that starve that version into non-existence. You're a guardian of your own stagnation. You want to be seen as evolving without enduring the cost of evolution. This illusion comforts you. It keeps you from feeling the humiliation of inaction. It allows you to say, I'm not failing, I'm preparing. But there's a deadline to how long preparation can be believed before it's indistinguishable from avoidance. Ask yourself, when was the last time you did something irreversible? Something that made the weaker part of you panic. Something that burned a bridge back to your old life. Becoming someone requires removing the exit doors. You keep every door unlocked. You keep every escape route open. You build your future while preserving the perfect conditions to return to your past. That's not transformation. That's a costume change. You can tell yourself you're evolving 1,000 times, but the mirror knows better. The mirror has no patience for fantasies. Here's what the mirror sees. You crave discipline without discipline. You crave confidence without evidence. You crave respect without paying any debt toward earning it. You crave becoming someone without betraying who you are now. You cannot negotiate your way into a new self. You cannot bargain with your weakness. Weakness doesn't sign treaties. Weakness waits. It watches. And as soon as you hesitate, it takes the throne again. There's a moment, small, private, and humiliating, when you finally admit this. You don't lack inspiration. You lack obedience to your own demands. Until that obedience exists, your transformation remains an illusion. A beautiful one, a believable one, but still a lie. You don't have to accept my description. Reality doesn't ask for your agreement. It only asks for your participation. You've been participating in your own decline for a long time. You used to think becoming someone was about adding more habits, more knowledge, more systems. You built lists. You built routines. You built an elaborate image of the future self you would eventually inhabit. Now you avoid those lists. You avoid those routines. You avoid that image. Looking at it hurts. It's easier to call it unrealistic than to admit you became incompatible with your own vision. This is the first crack. The quiet moment when you recognize that the person you once swore you would become does not match the person you're willing to be. You feel it as a small dissonance at first, a discomfort, an unease when you hear certain words. Discipline, honor, sacrifice. You flinch, but you hide the flinch. You think no one sees it. You're wrong. You see it, and I see it. The rest of this is simple. Once the crack appears, you have two options. You reinforce the structure, or you keep pretending it's not there until the structure collapses. You chose the second. This is not a moral judgment. It's just an inventory. I'm placing the facts on the table in front of you. You can call them harsh if you want. Harshness doesn't change their weight. You say you want transformation, but you've been practicing decay. You say you want identity, but you've been rehearsing disappearance. This is where we begin. Not with motivation, not with hope, not with promises of what you can become. We begin with the corpse of what you were supposed to protect. By order of the Peaky Blinders,